In October of 2018, Saudi U.S.-based journalist Jamal Khashoggi walked into the Saudi Consulate in Istanbul, Turkey, and he never left. The Washington Post columnist had come to pick up documents he needed to marry his Turkish fiancée, but was assassinated and dismembered by Saudi agents inside the diplomatic mission. U.S. intelligence officials say Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman ordered the murder of the prominent government critic himself. The third season of the popular podcast Conspiracyland takes a deep dive into Jamal Khashoggi's life and the brutal, horrific way that he died. The host of that podcast, Yahoo News chief investigative correspondent Michael Isikoff, is with me to discuss. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. The podcast is excellent, and for the first time, you're actually following and diving deep into a real conspiracy. The other ones were not conspiracies at all. They were works of fiction. In this podcast series, you uncover the confession of someone who was a sort of a former associate of Khashoggi, an aspiring journalist, if you will, who ended up supervising his murder. What can you tell us about that?
Exactly. There are two central figures that we focus on in the opening episode of Conspiracyland. One is a guy by the name of Mahir Mutreb, who's a Saudi intelligence officer who was the on-the-scene commander of the Tiger team of assassins that flew from Riyadh to Istanbul on October 2nd to murder Jamal Khashoggi. Mutreb was a longtime associate of Jamal Khashoggi's. They worked together at the Saudi embassy in London when Khashoggi was a media advisor to the then Saudi ambassador. They used to go to Friday prayers and then to tea in Mayfair afterwards. And he was specifically selected for this job to lull Khashoggi into complacency, to let him, so he could relax when he walked in, he would see a familiar face. In fact, Mutreb, as he confessed during Saudi interrogations, supervised Khashoggi's murder. And we know about this confession because there was a secret Saudi trial of the killers, in which prosecutors made assertions based on confessions during interrogations. And that trial was closed to the press. No human rights monitors, no public record of this trial exists. But we found for Conspiracyland notes taken by Turkish embassy observers who sat in on the trial and then passed them along to Turkish prosecutors in Istanbul who entered them into the court record. We had them translated, and there's a whole host of new details that we didn't know about exactly how Khashoggi was murdered. Mutreb's confession is one. The other is that that plane that flew the assassins to Istanbul made a late-night stopover in Cairo, Egypt, where they picked up illicit drugs, a lethal dose of illicit drugs that were injected into Khashoggi's left arm just hours later, killing him within a matter of minutes. What that suggests is there were other accomplices to Khashoggi's murder. It wasn't just Saudis. Somebody in Cairo provided those lethal drugs, witting or unwittingly. It could have been Saudi agents, or as some national security experts suggest, it could have been Egyptian intelligence who have very close ties to the Saudis.
And that's what I wanted to ask you about next, is the role of Egyptian intelligence. Were you able, I mean, that's kind of like you're really venturing into some difficult areas of investigation. Were you able to sort of flesh that part out at all?
You know, what we have is what we were able to get in the documents we found. Needless to say, the Egyptian spokesman for the Egyptian embassy and the Egyptian foreign ministry did not comment when we asked for them. But what we, as this podcast unfolds, it's 8 episodes. You'll see in episode 4, which is coming next week, there is unusually close ties between the Saudis and the El-Sisi government in Cairo. In fact, El-Sisi seized power in 2013 in a coup that was backed to the max by the Saudis. King Abdullah of Saudi Arabia even lobbied President Obama against the Morsi government, which El-Sisi overthrew, and against the Arab Spring protests. So this suggests there's sort of an authoritarian nexus in the Middle East that collaborated on the grisly murder of a prominent journalist.
So in the first episode of the podcast that's released right now, there's a friend of Khashoggi that you talked to, and he says something along the lines of, if anyone tells you that Khashoggi told them everything, that person's lying, because he only told people what they needed to know. He never told anyone everything. I'm wondering, after this podcast, do you think you know almost everything about the man, Jamal Khashoggi?
There's certainly, Jamal Khashoggi was a fascinating figure. I say in the podcast, he could have been a character in a novel because he had many lives, many of them secret, many of them unknown to the world. He began as a Muslim Brotherhood enthusiast who championed the cause of Osama bin Laden in Afghanistan during the Mujahideen War against the Soviet occupation. Then he went on to be a spin doctor for the Saudi government for many years. And as people who listen will learn in episode 4, he did secret missions for the Saudis, assigned, no doubt, by the former chief of Saudi intelligence, who hired him to work for the Saudi government. So, the portrayal of him as a dissident, it isn't quite right. In fact, that's a word that Khashoggi himself rejected for his entire life. But there's no doubt that towards the end, he became a fierce and fearless critic of Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince, and that's what led to his death.
I hope that sort of teases people a little into checking out the podcast, because I think even if you've read every article on this case, you will still be drawn in by this podcast. There are new things, and you got me hooked in the first episode, Michael. So thank you so much. Yahoo News Chief Investigative Correspondent Michael Isikoff, thank you so much.
Thank you.